though. This is a lot.
I still got my pistol, so I'm good at this.
Girl, Kenny's here. We ain't worried.
Okay, can I put this in the car? What are we doing?
I don't know.
I knew I should have just sworn. Okay, thank you.
You ready? Yeah.
I just want to put this down.
Hey y'all, when I tell you guys that I can't even give you guys my normal introduction because I am still in shock about the last 5 minutes of this episode. Brit Edie, you're a straight up weirdo. Because that display in that parking lot was absolutely jarring. It was unhinged. It was crazy. You crashed out for what? It goes to show my suspicions from episode 1 that you came on this show already gunning for Kenya. Because you cannot tell me that Kenya asking you a simple question, are you married or are you engaged, because I don't see a wedding band, could cause all this. And Bravo, let me just tap y'all for a minute, because how in the world can you fire Kenya for her reaction? And I'm not saying that what she did was right, and we'll talk more about that in episode 5. But for right now, I'm talking about Brit Edie. Bravo, if you're gonna fire Kenya, then Brit Edie should have also been fired as well. Because on what planet is it okay to threaten somebody with a firearm?
You done lost your damn mind. When you get your damn mind, you call me.
And Kenya paid this woman dust. That's the craziest part about it. And then on top of that, Kenya not getting confessionals. It's like, I'm just so perplexed as to why is she being treated like she's the bad guy when Brit started this whole entire thing. And bravo for you guys to consider yourselves the Ritz-Carlton 4 seasons of reality television. Brit's energy is now giving us VH1, Zeus Network, Baddies, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, because what the F are you talking about? You have whips and pistols. Excuse me, come again? This is crazed, whacked out fan behavior. I want to be so transparent with y'all. I will be wearing Brit out from now until the end of this season.
And you're going to always get it again and again and again.
I want her off the show. They need to have her walking papers, have that pink slip ready at this reunion. She needs to be a one and done. And does anybody remember when all the drama broke out? Brit was giving interviews saying that she never threatened anybody with a firearm. Oh, really, Miss Mamas? So did production put words in your mouth? Because I'm confused. And seeing you go off like that, I was thinking to myself, this is why we fired Marlo Hampton, because of her crazy behavior. They could have kept Marlo for all this. But y'all, without further ado, let's just get right on into it, because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So now we open up the episode with Angela Oakley and Brit Edie, and I was already annoyed. I said, I don't want to open up the episode with Brit Edie. And especially now, I'm like, damn, I miss the days when we opened up with the OGs. I'd rather see Porsha in an opening scene, or Drew, anybody but Brit Edie. But anyhow, I digress. So they're walking in the park. It's a nice hot summer day, and they're making small talk, catching up. Angela Oakley says that she's been busy, she's renovating her houses, and she's always in Home Depot. So now we cut to a confessional with Brit, and does anybody notice how she's always talking about her not getting along with other women and how other females either love her or hate her? Anytime I hear a woman refer to women as females, I'm like, I know exactly what you are. 9 times out of 10, the woman is usually a weirdo. But again, I digress. So let me just say this. Are friendships with other women difficult sometimes? Yes, they are. Is there some nonsense and some BS? Yes, there is. And I've talked about it, okay? But in Brit's case, I think that the real issue is that she's insufferable. She's aggravating, she's weird, she's unhinged, and it's telling that half the cast doesn't F with you. Shamia and Kelly both can't stand you. And the word on the street is that you spoke ill about Shamia's baby daughter Shiloh with the health problems. So again, in your case, I don't think that it's the other women, I think that it's you. And also, sis, that scene with you and your sister at lunch, that was really telling. I said, okay, yeah, Brit is definitely the reason why she has so many issues with everybody. So now they change gears and they bring up their families. So Angela says, you know that family is everything to me. And Brit's like, oh yeah, of course, like family is everything. And now Angela brings up that there's a rift between her and her sister, and their mom is in the middle of the drama. So she goes on to say that as married women, you know that we should not be including our family into our marriage dynamics, and unfortunately she did that. So Angela says that in the beginning it was all good between Charles, her sister, and her mom, but then things started to shift. So she goes on to say that her mom has an opinion, and one day she was bold enough to share that opinion with Charles, and things went left. They got into a huge argument, and it was all over cleaning up. I said, hold on. Angela, respectfully, your story makes no sense. Please explain to me how folks get into a blowout argument over cleaning. I believe that Angela's mom addressed Charles about something else. Probably about the outside baby that he had on her, or maybe the way he speaks to her, or maybe about money, but I don't believe for 1 minute that it was about cleaning up. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't you say in the second episode that your husband is great because he cooks, he cleans, he does it all? So if he's a great cleaner, then why would anybody be mad at him about cleaning up? I'm not understanding. So Angela continues on and says that even though they apologize, her husband still feels like it happened yesterday, and she says, I want to fix my family. Again, your family is torn apart over an argument about cleaning? Did your mom critique how Charles washes the dishes or cleans the counters? Please let me know because, again, I'm confused. So now Angela shares that she does help her mom and sister out financially, and she says it's just tough because it comes from Charles. So now Brit interjects and she's like, oh yeah, I get it, because sometimes when you help family members with resources, it can backfire in your face. So she brings up her sister Cher, and she says that she'll tell her husband Mike, like, hey, my sister needs some help, and her sister will even say, your husband is trying to be my daddy. When it comes to Brit and her husband, I don't think that they're gracious givers. I think that they're making her sister feel bad about her having to ask. So Brit launches into how she has 2 other sisters, and when their father died, it hit them all really hard because they were all daddy's girls. So when he passed, it was hard. So she goes on to say that her sister Cher gave up on everything, and as a result of that, their relationship has suffered. So now Angela brings up her dinner that she's throwing and how she's invited everybody, including Shamia. So she says, look, when it comes to me and Shamia, I feel like we got off on the wrong foot. She threw her jabs, I threw mine, but I'm open to hashing it out and moving forward. So now Angela brings up mean girl energy, and she's like, have you experienced that? And Brit says, when it comes to Shamia, she's always been warm and welcoming to me, but when it comes to Kenya, I felt like she was mean and snooty. So now we cut to Brit's confessional, and she says that Kenya has that persona that can ruffle feathers, and then she says, who wouldn't have a preconceived notion about Kenya's personality? And all throughout the episode, everybody was so confused by this one-sided beef, because even Angela said to you, I thought you guys cleared that all up. So Brit says, yeah, we did talk about it at Kelly's event, but she was still a bit snippy. I said, if I remember correctly, in last week's episode at Kelly's event, Kenya greeted you with a big hug. You met her daughter, Brooklyn. There was no shade, no beef between you guys. I think that this beef is a one-sided beef because the only person beefing is you, and you look crazy. The fact that everybody on this cast is baffled as to what you're upset about says a lot, because this beef is all made up in your pea brain. Again, you look insane, and you keep trying to drag this out. We are still talking about a silly comment from episode 1 at Shamia's party. This is 4 weeks later. Let it go. So now we cut to a short scene with Shamia. She's in her backyard. Her sister comes over. She has champagne on deck because she wants to play her sister her newest song. So Shamia says that she's been singing ever since she was little, starting off in church. Then she was in 2 groups. She was in one group with Carrie Hilson and another group called Co-Ed. And she says despite all that, she feels like she never got her fair shot. So Shamia tells her sister that she wants to play this song for the ladies at Angela's dinner. Now, the way Shamia had me screaming in her confessional when she started singing Smooth Criminal, your nose is mine. Shamia does admit that she went a bit too far, and she says, how am I supposed to be advocating for sisterhood when I'm out here saying stuff like that? So she says that she does want to extend an olive branch, and we see her order some olive oil from Instacart. I said, girl, I said, not you Instacarting one thing. Now we see another short scene with Porsha. She's meeting up with her team to discuss her brand. So we see her assistant there named Lauren, her creative director named Johnny, and her cousin Londi is there. I felt really bad to see Londi there because Londi passed away last summer. And she was on Porsha's spinoff show, Porsha Family Matters. And I loved how Londi was not here for the BS either. But yeah, rest in peace to Londi. Seeing her in this scene was bittersweet, knowing that she's no longer with us. So anyhow, Porsha says that she's happy they could meet because there's been a big change. The last 3 years, she was focused on being a family woman, being a wife, but now it's time to get back out there again and build this brand back up. So Porsha says that although the plan was to retire at 40, she wants to still be taken seriously in the business world. And I said, now Porsha, your plan was to eat off of Simon for the rest of your days. You're only doing this now because you have to, because there is no safety net. Simon is a fraud, but you have no choice but to get up and get these checks. So Porsha says that she's trying to build a billion-dollar empire, and she wants to expand her Pampered by Porsha line into more than just sheets. She wants to expand into home decor. Now, a quick side note, I've heard quite a few people say that her sheets are very luxurious and it's a great thread count too. And I believe it because despite Porsha having her issues, I don't believe that she'd put her name on some cheap stuff. So now they discuss Go Naked hair, and Johnny's asking if Porsha wants any more ambassadors. And Porsha says, I mean, yeah, but they have to be serious about their content. So now Johnny brings up how Drew reached out to him the other day and asked if he would sit down with her and Dennis about music. And Johnny's shady. He was like, all I'm thinking is, when did Dennis become Quincy Jones? So of course that leads us into Porsha shading Drew in her confessional. So she says that Drew wants to be her, is giving single white female. And I said, oh really, Porsha? Because the same could be said about you with how you got with Simon behind Fallon's back. You wanted Fallon's life. You saw that 40,000 square foot home. You saw all those cars, the private jets, and you wanted the same thing. You wanted to step right into Fallon's life. So not too much about Drew is single white female. So you have Porsha saying that it's cute when you wear my wigs, but bitch, you can't be me. I said, all right, Porsha. So Porsha's joking about firing Drew, and she says, well, obviously we have a whole team at Go Naked, and she says they have HR, lawyers, and it's all Porsha. Porsha is the Go Naked team. Now this Drew and Ralph scene with them outside playing with their kids, and now they're discussing the ins and outs of their divorce. Honestly, I was annoyed because the fact that they gave Ralph a confessional, but they won't give Kenya a confessional. And you can tell that he is just loving the attention because the way he sat there with his blazer with no shirt underneath, I mean, he was ready for his close-up. I was like, oh my gosh. But Drew says that they're much better off as co-parents than being a married couple. She says that she tries to keep it cute for the sake of their kids. She takes it one step at a time and makes the best of it. Again, seeing Ralph in a confessional really pissed me off. You have him saying that this divorce has been really long and ridiculous and messy. And I said, sir, it's messy and ridiculous because of you. Drew says that she's happy they can coexist right now without arguing. Then she brings up how their oldest son, Josiah, is quiet. And Ralph says, oh, really? Because he sent me an article the other day detailing our divorce. So Drew is shocked to hear that. And now we find out that the judge ordered them to not talk about the divorce with the kids. So I'm confused about that because the kids already know that something's wrong. They know that daddy's now in the basement. They never see them together. So isn't that a bit silly for the judge to say, well, don't tell the kids when the kids already know that something's wrong? Now, I've always touched on Ralph's demeanor and how he always gives you this smug, sarcastic, gaslighting vibe. And every time he opens his mouth, he just frustrates me to no end because it never feels sincere. So he's like, he spent this time being reflective, and then he goes on to say that he read all the articles that Drew sent him about being a narcissist, and Drew's like, well, that's what you are. And Ralph gaslights her saying that she's crazy, so they're going back and forth about that. So Drew's like, look, just own it, and now Ralph says, if that's your experience with me, then I want to apologize. I don't believe for a minute that Ralph is sorry about anything. So he could have kept this weak apology. Drew actually ate it up. She was like, oh, well, that's a big deal for you to acknowledge that. And Ralph trying to use that weak ass apology as to why he can't be a narcissist really blew me. Because for him to say, well, you know that narcissists, they can't apologize. And I said, sir, that was not a real apology. So it proves Drew's point that yes, you are still indeed a narcissist. But Drew brings up their co-parenting and she says that we do need to communicate more when it comes to the kids. And then she goes on to say that sometimes what the judge has ordered is not in the best interest of them and their children. So of course Ralph disagrees and he's like, well, honestly, I think that it's been really good. So Drew's like, oh yeah, I know, you love the basement. So now we cut to production giving Ralph this fake MTV Cribs montage and it's him giving a tour of the basement. I just said, this is so shameful and pathetic that this grown-ass man refuses to leave that house. I thought that Ralph had all this money as a tech guy. Why won't he get a place somewhere else? And Ralph, you coming out to disparage Drew and say that she's lying on you and you do have the money? Stop. Because if you did have the money, you'd have your own bachelor pad. You would not be in the basement with your estranged wife. Drew reminding Ralph that this is the life that he wanted. He wanted to be out, zipping it and zooing it with other people. And Ralph is like, well, that's not what I wanted. It was a respect issue. I said, sir, you married a pick-me. You married a woman who was all about her husband. Okay? Very much my man, my man, my man. She was shading Kenya and LaToya. Remember LaToya? She was only on for a season as a friend of, but she was sitting up there saying that other women had the Delilah or Jezebel spirits. It didn't get much more ride or die than Drew. Just saying. Now this scene with Kelly going to Kenya's hair spa, definitely one of the best scenes of the night. And on top of that, I would have loved to have watched Kelly and Kenya's friendship play out because there is a natural chemistry between them. They have similar stories. And the way they connected, especially in this scene, I loved everything about it. So they sit down to talk, and Kenya mentions Kelly's bodyguard. She's like, girl, why do you have a bodyguard? So Kelly's like, girl, you have a mark, and I have a mark too. So Kenya's confused. She's like, wait, is this because of Mark? Was he abusive? So Kelly shares that there have been situations, and on top of that, she has a restraining order out against him because he threatened her in court. Now I said, do you know how much of a dummy you are to threaten somebody while the judge is right there? I was just like, my God, they need to lock him up and throw away the key. Throw that man under the jail because, like, what are we thinking? So Kelly reveals that he threatened to unalive her in court, and the judge was like, here, girl, get a restraining order, protect you and your girls. So on top of that, her ex-husband can't even see their girls right now because of his actions. Now, this might be controversial. I don't mean to talk out of turn. I'm not married. I do not have any children as of yet, right? But if I were in Kelly's position, I don't think I would ever get comfortable enough to let that man see my kids ever, because this man is too much of a risk. It would be, you could see them, but I have to be there, and we're meeting in a public space. We'll meet at a restaurant, Cheesecake Factory, every other Saturday for a few hours, and that's it. But this man seems truly unhinged. And the fact that he threatened to take her life in court right in front of the judge, that speaks volumes. And I feel so bad for Kelly's daughters that they have to witness this. And you really hope that this hasn't warped their sense of what a relationship looks like, you know what I'm saying? Or what a marriage looks like. I just feel really bad for them. So Kenya wants to know what exactly is her ex-husband still fighting her about, and Kelly says he wants the business. So now Kenya's like, did you already have the business prior to the marriage? And Kelly says, no, the business is almost 8 years old. We were married for 11 years. So Kelly says that when she left her husband, she told him, look, keep your residual income and I'm going to keep running the businesses. So he told her that he would close everything down and that she would have nothing without him. And I said, I'll bet you guys money that during that marriage, Kelly was the brains behind the operation. That man got jealous because he felt emasculated, and that's why he's still causing all this hell. Again, y'all, especially my Black Girls, stop marrying down. It does not work. And also, you could look at Kelly's husband and see he was crazy. He probably already felt a way about a pretty woman marrying him in the first place. He probably felt insecure because he looked a mess. And that ill-fitting suit that he had on their wedding day, no ma'am, no sir. He had a whole lot of issues going on. And look at Kenya. Kenya also married down. And look where that got her. A divorce that took forever and a damn day. That man never loved her, didn't even like her. He's a deadbeat father, hasn't seen Brooklyn in ages. A mess. And I saw the articles come out a few days ago about how he's being evicted from his apartment in Jersey and his restaurant here in New York shut down. I'm just like a hot ass mess. But ladies, stop dating and marrying down. Nothing good is going to come from it, other than an insecure man trying to tear you down. A man who has nothing will help you lose everything. So now Kenya makes a joke saying that her ex-husband tried to color purple her, and now we cut to Kelly's confessional, and she says, I like Kenya a lot. Then she goes on to say that I'm confused as to what Brit's talking about because I don't see it. And I said, Kelly, the reason why you don't see it is because Brit is a weirdo. This is a one-sided beef in her mind. Kenya has not done anything to her. Brit is making this up as she goes along because she's grasping at straws and she's obsessed with Kenya. That's what this is. So now Kenya shares a vulnerable moment and she's like, Kelly, I applaud you and I have to ask you, how do you get people to come in? Because I'm struggling. So Kelly says that word of mouth has always been good to her. And then she goes on to ask Kenya if Kenya plans on franchising her hair spa. So Kenya says, well, that was the plan. And then she says that she's already $400,000 in. And then she jokes and says, I blew my daughter's college education on this spa. So Kenya starts crying and she's like, sometimes I think, did I do the right thing? And I think that we can all relate to Kenya on some level because there are times in life where you have to bet it all. You have to bet on yourself and risk it all, so to speak. And it is scary, it is nerve-wracking, it is anxiety-inducing because you are nervous that it might fail. But if you don't try, you're not gonna know. But I felt for Kenya in the moment because that is a lot of money. And you don't want it to go belly up. You want your business to succeed. But I do want to ask all my subscribers in the ATL, let me know, have you been to Kenya's hair spa? Do you plan on going? Do you know anybody who's been? Because I've heard from people that she's only open like 3 days out the week. I tried to Google her hair spa. The website didn't show up. Then I saw it's closed. Then I saw a few reviews from people saying that they had a great experience. So I don't know what to think, what to believe. But if you have been, you plan on going, let me know. I'm really enjoying Kelly. I liked how she was encouraging. She was like, it's all going to work out. Don't worry about it. Then she says, look, sometimes God gives you the vision and nobody else. And she's right about that. That's very true. You cannot expect everybody around you to see the vision. So you have to see it through despite having doubts or worries. And that's with anything in life. Anything new is going to be challenging. You're going to be scared, but you have to take that and just know that it's going to work out. I'm not going to hold you. I'm not spending a whole lot of time on this scene with Brit and her sister going out for lunch because Brit annoyed me so bad. I feel like she was so dismissive of her sister's feelings. When her sister said, how come every time I talk to you, your husband has to be right there? Like, I want to talk to you one-on-one. Now, can we just talk about this for a minute? Some women get a man and they act like he is another limb. When I want to have girl talk, I want to have girl talk. I don't need your man to be sitting right there. And I've met people like that where girls' night is officially over. If you're on the phone, their man is there. They have you on speaker. He's hearing all your business. Like, excuse me? I don't want your man knowing my business. And I caught that slick shade that Brit threw about how her sister Cher feels away because she's not married and Brit is. And I said, really, Brit? You want to reduce it to that? Your sister is saying that I miss our girl time, I miss our sister time, and now you're MIA because you got married. For Brit to reduce that to, well, you know, she's just upset because I'm married and she's not. Like, she wishes that she were in my position. I'm like, that's not what your sister said. Again, y'all, I was getting more and more aggravated with this scene because it felt like Brit was not trying to be understanding. Did anybody else think it was a bit alarming when her phone started going off and she says, oh yeah, that's Mike, and he's telling me that it's time to come home now? I said, girl, what? She's out to lunch with her sister. Why does she have to be home? It's giving control issues, because I'll be damned if I'm out with my sister having some girl time and my future husband's at home blowing me up saying that it's time to come home like I'm a kid. I said, absolutely not. That was very strange to me. I thought it was weird and a bit alarming. And also, you know that she's on a show filming scenes. So for you to be blowing up her phone saying it's time to come home, what are we talking about? I don't know. Maybe I don't understand, but I thought that was a bit strange. Now, I know Porsha was not pleased when she saw this scene in this past episode, because we see Drew and Dennis in the studio. I said, oh, okay, but they're playing one of Drew's new songs. It sounds good. And now we have Drew addressing Dennis and all the drama. And she says, Dennis, every time I hang with the girls, there's some drama. It's kind of awkward. It's a very stressful environment. So you have Dennis playing dumb, and he's like, oh, really? I said, now, Dennis, don't do that. You just got cursed out by Porsha 2 weeks ago. So you know exactly what Drew's talking about. So Drew's like, Dennis, Porsha's not okay with us working together. You told me that she was cool with it, but she's obviously not okay. Now, Dennis is low-key a comedian, because he's like, well, when this whole thing happened, she was in Nigeria eating fufu. No, I said, wait, hold on. Because why did my mouth water when he said that? My mind instantly went to fufu with peanut soup. I'm like salivating, okay? It always looks so good. And shout out to all my Nigerian subscribers. But yes, when he said that, my mouth was watering. And I do have to say that if Porsha were still with Simon, she would not give a damn about Dennis and Drew. But because that marriage has gone bust, now she's upset about what Dennis is doing. Drew goes on to ask Dennis if he'll bridge the gap and clear the air. And Dennis says, you can take the lead on that. Pretty much like, look, girl, I tried to talk to her. I got cursed out. I'm not doing this again. And I said, Drew, whether Dennis sets the record straight or not, Porsha is still going to be upset. So save your breath, save your time. You're working with the man. It is what it is. So now it's the night of Angela's dinner at the bank, and we see all the women getting ready. We have Brit in her closet. She's FaceTiming Kelly, and she says that Mike's gonna drop her off because she doesn't feel safe, because I think that the restaurant is in Bankhead. So now we flip to Shamia in Glam. She's on FaceTime with Porsha, and they're talking about Drew. So Shamia's like, have you talked to her since my party? And Porsha's like, no, but I'm going to talk to her one-on-one. We're going to have a good night tonight. So now we see Angela pull up to the bank, and Charles drops her off in a Rolls Royce. Now, Angela, in the first episode when Shamia got her Rolls Royce, you were like, oh, well, I want Charles to buy me a gift like that. The way you were talking, I had no idea that you guys also had a Rolls Royce. But yeah, they pulled up in a Rolls. I said, I know that's right. So Angela says that the theme for tonight is Black excellence, and she wanted all the women to wear all black. So we see Brit, Drew, and Porsha arrive. They all look good. And now we cut to Porsha's confessional, and she says, I had never heard of the bank before. Then we cut to Angela's confessional, and she says that even though people say that the bank is in a rough side of town, I don't care. We're going to have a good time. Now, whether or not the bank is in a rough side of town, the restaurant looked amazing. I love the whole vibe. I said, I'll gladly go. I might hire a bodyguard or two, but I will be there. So we see Kelly arrive. Kelly looked good. She had a nice bold red lip. And now we see Kenya arrive. Baby, Kenya showed up in, I want to say, was it teal or was it more like a Tiffany blue? Whatever it wasn't black. And they're like, Kenya girl, what are you wearing? You're supposed to wear black. And she's like, it's Versace. So Kenya's like, well, I must have missed it because I didn't see it on the invitation. And they're all like, all right, girl. Now, mind you, they're all joking around with Kenya. But of course, you have Brit with her face all screwed up. And she's like, oh, I thought it was all black. I said, girl, shut up. So Kenya's going around the table, hugging everybody. She gets to Brit and she gives Brit a hug and a pat. So you have Brit saying, oh, that wasn't a hug, that was a pat, but I guess. So Kenya's like, no, I gave you a hug. And I'm like, you need help because it's clear that you are reaching to have a problem. And also, you know good and well that when you're at an event, you give people those cute little air kisses and you don't really give them a full hug because you don't want to get makeup on their outfit. Duh. Like, what are we talking about here? And with every passing scene, it's showing me that you are a crazed fan because the way you are so desperate for her attention, Kenya can't do enough for you. Whatever she does is not good enough. You low-key want to live in her skin because how are you saying, well, that wasn't a hug when she gave you a hug? You're not well because who carries on like this? And it wasn't lost on me how excited you were that you were sitting right next to Kenya. It was giving very much like look at me like a dog. Because it's just weirdo behavior. You can't stand this woman, but yet you want to be up under her every second of the day. And then for you to say, well, here we go again, Kenya. I said, girl, it's not any here we go or here we go again. She has not done anything to you. So last but not least, we have our girl Shamia arrive and she shows up bearing gifts. She brings Angela an olive branch and she apologizes for making fun of her nose. She says, that's not like me to go after another woman's appearance, and I'm sorry. So Angela's like, let's start this dinner off right. Let's eat up, drink up, have a good time. So when I tell y'all, the food at the bank looked phenomenal. I don't think you guys understand how much my mouth was watering throughout this scene. If you've been to the bank, let me know, because that food looked amazing to me. They had salmon bites and egg rolls. I was just like, ooh. And then when they brought the entrees out, you know what? I need to stop. I need to stop doing reviews when I'm hungry. But Kenya's asking what's in the egg rolls. Porsha's joking around saying, oh, those are peach cobbler egg rolls because, you know, we're in the South. We're in Bankhead. Everything's Southern. So her and Kenya are having some light banter. And again, it just pains me that Kenya was fired because I wanted to see Kenya and Porsha ride off into the sunset as besties. And this banter between them was just chef's kiss.
Okay, and what are these?
Little egg roll.
Okay, what's inside?
Peach cobbler egg roll.
What's inside?
Everything is Southern, honey. We is in Bankhead. Little collard green egg roll.
Little chitlins rolled up.
Little yam bite. So you know you
Now, Kelly, I've been enjoying you. I think that you're a great addition. But Miss Mamas, you did a bit too much when you tried to call Drew out about not buying anything at your event. I said, I'm sorry, Kelly, but you were trying way too hard to garner a moment. There's a time and a place to shade and read, but for some reason, this just felt cheap. I wasn't here for it. But Kelly says that last week at my event, Drew told me that she was bringing other people and I knew her sister was coming, but I had no idea that her makeup artist was going to show up too. So then she's like, and he didn't buy anything. And I'm like, okay, and? He was probably there to just touch up her makeup because you guys were filming the scene. And also, her makeup artist is not a part of the show, so to call him out for not buying anything, again, it felt really tacky to me. But Kelly's still going and calling out Drew for not buying anything. She's like, oh yeah, I noticed that you didn't walk out with a bag. And Drew's like, what are you talking about? I actually bought a blazer for my son for $2,000. So Drew shows Kelly her phone to prove that she did buy something. And you have Kelly looking at her text messages and she calls out how Dennis is texting her. Now I said, Kelly, that was just so lame to me. Like, why are we doing this? So now we cut to Kelly's confessional and she says, yeah, she showed me the text messages between her and the sales associate, but I still don't see a transaction. She was at my event, drinking that champagne, eating the hors d'oeuvres, but didn't buy anything. She's not used to being in rooms like this. And I said, no, hold on, Kelly. First of all, we all know that Drew is known to be cheap. A lot of the ladies have said that it's a known thing that when Drew goes shopping, she'll buy the designer pieces and then return them the next day. So when Drew walked in to Balmain for your event, I was not expecting Drew to buy anything because that's just how Drew is. And I'm sorry, Kelly, but you give me very much you're not used to anything and very nouveau riche, where you're just so excited to have money, you want to shout it from the housetops. And I still like you and all, but that kind of read should have been saved for if you and Drew got into it down the line. Like, oh girl, you want to read me, but you came to my event and didn't even buy anything. Then it would have been cute. But for you to just do this out of nowhere, I was like, oh no. So Kelly does thank them for attending and placing orders. And then Drew cuts in and she's like, Kenya, how's your hair spa coming along? So Kenya says that it's going well and she's inviting all of them to her hair spa grand opening. So it's good vibes. The food has come out. They're all eating, enjoying themselves. And now Angela addresses Shamia and she's like, Shamia, what's going on with your life? Like, catch us up. So Shamia announces her new song and she wants to play it for them. Now, did anybody notice a change in Porsha's demeanor when Shamia brought up her song and how she wanted to play it for them? She went from in a great mood, laughing and joking, to all of a sudden, she was real serious, real quiet. It was just really weird. And I also thought it was really weird when Porsha said, oh, why do I feel like it's a diss track? I'm like, why would you say that? The only thing that should be coming out of your mouth is, oh my gosh, Shamia, I can't wait to hear it. How exciting. So Shamia plays her song. Everybody's vibing to it. They're enjoying it. Everybody except for Porsha. So Porsha's like, oh, this sounds like Drew. So I'm like, wait, what? Your best friend just said, I'm coming out with an album. Here's one of my songs. Listen to it. And you're talking about, oh, it sounds like Drew? Are you well? And Porsha got progressively weirder because when Shamia finished playing the song, you have Porsha still saying, wait, that was you? I didn't hear you. Are you sure that was you on the track? And Shamia even got annoyed. She was like, Porsha, can you stop saying that? That was me. I think that Porsha has a very jealous spirit when it comes to Shamia. Because for you to sit there and say all throughout the song, oh, that's you? That's not Drew? Like, what are you talking about? There was no congratulations. There was no, I'm so happy for you. This is awesome. The song sounded great. It was, that was you? Did you even sing on the track? That was a way to diminish Shamia's moment. Anybody who cannot celebrate your wins is a hater. I believe that Porsha feels away because Shamia has the life that she thought she was going to have too when she got with Simon. I just feel like Porsha cannot celebrate other people. If it's not about her, she's annoyed. So since they're at the bank, Angela has a cute game where she has deposit slips where they all have to write each other questions. So they read the questions, and I think Shamia's question was, how did you thank your husband after he bought you that Rolls Royce for your birthday? And Shamia demonstrates for us that she had to break out the throat spray and the knee pads to show her husband some appreciation. So now Porsha has a question for Angela asking what's something that Angela wouldn't want the group to know. And Angela says, well, nothing really. I'm an open book. So Porsha's like, well, have you guys ever had a threesome? And Angela's like, oh no, like we don't do threesomes. I don't let anybody else in my bed. Like, no ma'am. So now Porsha's like, oh, but isn't Charles kind of spicy? And Angela says, I mean, he can be. So Porsha's like, well, you know what? I've heard some things about Charles, but you know what? Never mind. So we know that Angela does not play about her husband. And Angela's like, girl, like, don't play. What have you heard? So you have Porsha saying, you know, next question, next question. Now we cut to Angela's confessional, and Angela said what we were all thinking. Angela says Porsha won't even discuss her own marriage and her own situation. Keep my man's name out of your mouth. Then she says under her breath, stupid bitch. I said, ooh. Now, Porsha, I thought that you were out of line to insinuate that you have some tea on Charles Oakley when not only have you never addressed the whole situation with how you and Simon got together, you won't even address how you tried to physically harm Dennis's mother on national TV. You don't own up to anything. So the audacity for you to put somebody else's marriage on blast is comical. And if I were Angela, I would have worn you out because how dare you? You wouldn't even answer Kelly's question about why did you take that lady's man, but yet you want to question somebody else? The absolute gall. So now these next few questions are all for Kenya. And the first question is, Kenya, what color panties are you wearing? Kenya actually shows them. They're all laughing. And I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Brit wrote that question. She's so obsessed with Kenya, she wants to know everything. So now Drew reads a question for Kenya, and it's like, Kenya, why are you so worried about happily married women? And we already know that Brit wrote this. So I think Kenya makes a joke saying it's a habit, I guess. Then she says, I'm being silly. And now Brit goes on to read another question for Kenya, and it's clear that Brit also wrote this one as well. So it's like, Kenya, how come you can't speak nicely to Brit without an attitude? So Kenya's caught off guard and she says, I speak to everybody nicely without an attitude. So it's clear that Brit has gone off the rails because she's like, I'm not talking about everybody else, I'm talking about me. So Kenya's like, well, you clearly want a moment, so here you go. And she's disengaging from Brit and her delusions. And rightfully so, because this is just unhinged behavior. So Brit is hollering and screaming about nothing, and then Kenya says, honey, I am the moment. So that pisses Brit off even more. Once again, how are you mad at Kenya when you started this whole entire thing? And do you know how crazy you look trying to argue with somebody who's not arguing back with you? Kenya was paying that girl dust. And I loved every minute of it. So you have Brit saying, should I read the question again? And Kenya's like, you know what? I'm not playing these childish games. Peasants can't come for the queen. And baby, when she said peasant, that really sent Brit over the edge. I said, oh my gosh, somebody come and take Brit to get evaluated because this woman needs help. So you have Brit saying that I didn't send for you, and I said you did send for her. You have been desperately seeking Kenya's attention since episode 1. Kenya knows how to slice you without breaking a sweat, because the way she said, well, thank you for using my catchphrase, I said whack her again.
I'm just scoot on over and let you whack him. Get him again. Get him for me.
So Kenya gets up to leave, and now you have Brit saying, get the F out of here, bitch. And I said, baby, you've already lost the argument.
Get the out of here. Get the out of here. Some people be trying the wrong ones. They be looking for their moment.
Ladies,
I have to, like, get the out of here, bitch.
Because you can't argue with somebody who's not arguing back with you. You look like a lunatic. And Kenya was so calm and collected, and you're over there at the table spiraling. And everybody clocked how nutty you are. Angela was like, this is way too much. Even Drew was like, where's all this energy coming from? Shamia even says, girl, it's time to slow down. Porsha was like, yeah, Brit's doing way too much. So Angela has gifts for all of them. And we see Porsha and Kenya walking out together. And now we see Brit still at the table talking loud and yelling, saying that she wants to call her husband because only some of them know what it's like to be in a happy marriage. And of course, that shade directed towards Kenya. I said, once again, for you to be this worked up, there is something wrong. So at this point, we see everybody by the door, and we see Brit's husband, Mike, pop out. I said, now, where did he come from? But anyhow, you see Kenya paying her dust, and she's talking to Drew and Porsha, and we hear Brit off to the side cursing, and she's talking about, we're not done yet. I got pistols. I said, come again? Did I hear that right? I said, what show are we on? So at this point, they're all in the parking lot, and Kenya's waiting for her car. And Porsha's like, girl, don't worry about it. I'll drive you. Like, just get in the car. So as Kenya's getting into Porsha's car, we see Brit just going off. She's going off like a certified nut. She's like, I got whips, I got pistols. I don't play that. I don't play that Hollywood TV. Like, you don't want this, girl. I got pistols. I'm just like, what are we talking about? We have lost the plot. And I need some understanding. What exactly is Brit mad about? What did Kenya do to Brit? Somebody let me know because I'm confused. And this is why I keep saying, y'all need to stop hiring these crazed fans to be on the show. And people get offended when I use that word fan, but it's the truth. Fans like Brit are dangerous and a huge detriment to the show because some of these newbies come on these shows with some hidden jealousy, secret animosity with these women that they've been watching for years. And in Brit's case, I feel like she has made an idol out of Kenya. Now that she's around Kenya, she feels intimidated, and that admiration has now turned to hate and jealousy. And that's why she's so obsessed with Kenya. Because this does not make any sense. Brit, you showed your entire ass, and I'm sorry to say it, you're a loser. I would not want to work with you ever again. Because no way. Not only am I questioning my safety, I'm concerned. There is no way that you would be around me. I'd have a restraining order against you. You would not be able to talk to me. I would have gone to the higher ups immediately. The next day, I would have emailed Andy and CC'd the whole damn network. I'm not working with her. This nut threatened to take me out with a pistol, said she had whips. Get her off right now. But we end the episode with Porsha driving off. Kenya's in the back seat, and Kenya's like, did you hear her saying that she was gonna take out a pistol? So Porsha's like, wait, what? And Kenya's like, yeah, girl, she said that. So Kenya says, I wish she would because then she'll be gone. And I said, again, Kenya, at this moment, I would have been on my phone drafting up the email to get Brit off the show. Again, I'm not saying that Kenya has been innocent. I'm not saying that you have to like her, but I think we can all agree that nobody deserves to be threatened with a firearm over some stupid one-sided argument. Because be clear, this beef has only been on Brit's end. Kenya has no beef with her. The beef has been on Brit's side. Now, Bravo, respectfully, y'all messed up by not firing Brit on the spot. And I'm shocked and appalled that you would allow this behavior to stay. And I'm really surprised because the way you guys fired Monica Garcia on SOC, you would think that you guys would take the same precautions and fire this one. Brit falls into the Monica Garcia category. Praised fan who came on the show. But yeah, I was too done. Brit, this needs to be your first and your last season. You have been an awful addition. But y'all, that was my recap. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for listening. If you listen on the podcast, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, shout out to y'all. And again, you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all later. Bye.